Are you afraid of imminent invasion from your surrounding neighbors? Well, just picture this. Your inventory, full of outdated airframes. It may be a surprise to you, but those old lemons don't hold a candle to the might of a modern air force. Now, before you sit back and think about how screwed you are without an interceptor, the Galaxy Tech Motors Corporation has a solution for you. Do you know what 70-year-old, dilapidated, cursed airframe needs a modernization program to put its performance and combat capability to modern standards? If you guessed the plane nicknamed the Widowmaker by Germans because of its high accident rate in the hands of German pilots, you'd be wrong. The F-104 does not need a modernization program, but we're going to be doing it anyways. For some reason, ever since I was about 17, I took one good look at the F-104 and said, yep, that's the plane I'll be making fun of for the next 5 years of my life. And so here I am, turning this peculiar airframe into a modern Gen 4.5 aircraft. In a video game, of course. Because for some reason it wasn't clear that the last time I was doing it that I was making a stealth Cessna in a video game. Anyways, the F-104 was designed with two main design goals: lightweight and fast. Its simple, lightweight, and high-speed design effectively countered the increasingly heavy and mechanically complex designs that were coming out at the time, instead prioritizing weight savings and rate of climb for interception missions. During the Korean War, many American pilots complained that MiG-15s they were fighting had better altitude performance and time to climb than the heavier American F-86. There were more reasons than just that, but we'll just, for the sake of the video, that's it. American planes, just like the citizens, are naturally obese. Lockheed, of course, took these considerations very seriously. That, along with some other very interesting design choices that were definitely a product of the time period. Instead of the traditionally highly swept wings featured on most time period fighter aircraft, the F-104 featured wings modeled after the blade of a guillotine, mounted towards the middle of the fuselage. The plane's wings were only 4 inches thick at the very most. On top of this, the F-104's leading edges were sharp enough to cut a piece of paper on. At the time, this was designed to reduce the wave drag that would be encountered at supersonic speeds. However, it literally posed a hazard to the vehicle's ground crew. These speed modifications were coupled with the powerful Pratt & Whitney J79 afterburning turbojet. These modifications were successful in many ways, besides decapitating maintenance staff. The F-104 was the first production aircraft capable of sustaining Mach 2 flight. Although, as you might be able to tell by just looking at it, it sacrificed a lot to maintain that. Here's some fun facts about the F-104. Number 1. The F-104 initially featured a downwards ejection seat. Yes, this resulted in the death of a decent number of pilots who ejected close to the ground. Until, of course, we found an ejection seat capable of clearing that tail. Number 2. Yes, you can cut yourself on the wings of the F-104. They are almost as sharp as a knife. This is not a joke. Number 3. The F-104 has an arrestor hook. This was designed so it could actually land on a runway in the case of a brake failure. However, I believe it's funnier to imagine that the F-104 could have had a naval variant. There's nothing more beautiful than seeing an F-104 taking off from an aircraft carrier. Fact number 4. 292 of the 916 F-104s acquired by Germany were lost, most of which crashed. Are you kidding me? That's like 30% of them. I mean, I can see why they nicknamed it the Widowmaker, but like, how? So you might hear all these astonishing facts and think, oh boy, I'd love to own an F-104. If you want to own a starfighter, research shows that the most successful method is to buy a patch of land and wait for a West German pilot to crash into it. So just in case the largest Nazi pilot killer after World War II left an impression on you, we're going to remake the F-104, improve its dated airframe elements with modern equipment in a game called Flyout. Just in case you thought we were doing it in real life for some reason. That being said, we'll try and keep the original shape and, spirit of the original F-104 while modifying the airframe to keep it as authentic as possible. So I persuaded my friend Jamie here to give me a ripped 3D asset of the F-104 that I wouldn't be using because it's a ripped asset. I would instead be using it as a reference image while making my own. So here's the F-104 I made. The only manned missile explicitly designed to seek XB-70s. Essentially a missile with 2 little winglets, the F-104 excelled at speed and climb rate. On top of this, despite the lack of maneuverability, the F-104 was still capable of high responsiveness to its controls at high speeds. Its incredible sensitivity resulted in several German crashes as they often practiced low-altitude, high-speed attack missions with their modified F-104s. As you can imagine, low-altitude, high-speed, and a highly sensitive control system result in many issues. Regardless, many of the problems were due to engine problems or instrument failure, something pilots could not control. And by many, I mean like a vast minority. As you can see, the 3D model I built is also wholly untextured, only with shiny metallic skin. Since we will be heavily modifying the airframe, I didn't see a point in texturing it till after we were done. Otherwise, with a turn time of 3 to 5 business days and a turning circle the size of continental Australia, the F-104 flew about how I expected it to fly in real life. On top of this, with a fuel time of 9 minutes on afterburner and 35 on mil power, it wasn't precisely an airplane with any amount of loiter capabilities either. There was a severe lateral stability issue that was apparent in any rolls, making the plane extremely difficult to control even if you were coordinated on the rudders. It wasn't a real-life problem of the F-104, it's just because of flyout wings not being able to occlude each other's airflow. So because of this, to make it more realistic, I added an aileron automatic reaction to the side slip to make it behave a little bit closer to its real-life counterpart. Usually, an aircraft likes to roll into the side slip. The T-tail and stubby wings caused a high level of airstream blockage from the fuselage, meaning it would roll significantly into the side slip. The anhedral of the plane's wings counters this and balances the plane out a bit. However, due to the limitation of flyout simulation, the two forces that the anhedral wings attempted to balance they aren't there. Instead, we're left with a plane that rolls significantly away from the side slip, which is even worse. To make this aircraft fly more realistically, I added an artificial response that balances the rolling motion in a side slip. This was also pretty funny because the plane would automatically roll into the side slip while taxiing. It made me look like really coordinated as a pilot, but trust me, it's just the plane doing it itself. Oh, why'd you crash the F-104? Well, clearly I just needed more right rudder. So what modifications would we be making to the F-104 to make it modern? Excellent question. First, it's essential that what we have stays in F-104. We can't do anything that significantly changes the silhouette of the vehicle. There must be light external modifications to the F-104, and we can go as far as engine swaps and changing the flight controls for the interior. In other words, it has to be a believable retrofit of the F-104's airframe, changing as little as possible. Alright, let's start with its aerodynamics. The F-104, as you might know, has a tiny wing area and minimal lifting capability. We'd remove the old wings and install brand new wings with a slightly increased wing area. But this wasn't enough, we still needed more. These wings were explicitly designed to allow for high-speed supersonic flight without generating significant levels of wave drag, therefore trading a decent amount of its lifting capability at low speeds. Lucky for us, in the 70 years since this airframe was designed, we've found ways to generate lift without compromising high supersonic performance. By creating a wing with a sweep angle greater than 50 degrees, approximately, we can use the induced drag generated along the leading edge for extra lift. This allows for highly swept wings with ideal supersonic area ruling and a high critical Mach number to generate decent lift. We'd add a small vortex generator, a leading edge extension, and low-profile tail booms to the F-104 to induce vortex lift to the airframe. This allows us to increase our wing area by over 50% over the original, with almost no change to the vehicle's aesthetics or wing profile, and generate extra lift in the form of vortex lift at high angles of attack. Although all benefits are crucial to our design, the lifting surfaces would also cause a substantial increase in drag with load factor and move the center of pressure forwards. We'll deal with those problems later. The F-104 also had a unique superstall problem, with airflow being cut off from the tail at high angles of attack, and this change would only increase that problem. To counter this, a small hydraulic system and air brake were installed at the bottom of the plane towards the tail. The air brake would slowly deploy at any air brake exceeding about 15 degrees, reaching its full deployment at approximately 22 degrees. The single air brake being placed towards the back of the fuselage would cause a downward pitching moment, helping to correct the plane from any severe AOA. All these changes helped the aircraft's performance a noticeable amount, allowing for a plus 3 degree per second turn rate, a higher armament capability, and a better glide ratio. Greater than falling out of the sky like a brick the second you don't have thrust. However, these modifications also reduced its top speed somewhat. While the drag coefficient remained the same, the slight increase in cross-sectional area resulted in more drag. Its top speed was mainly unchanged at optimal altitudes, but reduced to just above the sound barrier at sea level. We had two methods to increase speed, increasing thrust or reducing drag. And I didn't really see any room to reduce drag anymore. The fact that this thing breaks the sound barrier at sea level with half the thrust of the F-16 is already impressive enough. The original F-104 engine, the General Electric J79, was ahead of its time. However, it still had its limitations, especially compared to modern engines. This single-spool engine experienced structural limitations, relying on a single 3-stage turbine to take all of the combustion chamber's pressure, heat, power, and torque. By spreading both the compression and turbine stages into two separate spools, this power can be relieved and a higher compressor ratio can be achieved without compromising the structural stability of the engine. This low-pressure fan on the front can also bypass air around the engine core, increasing thrust efficiency and cooling the engine core. This allows for higher combustion temperatures. To say that again in English, switching from a single-spool afterburning turbojet J79 to my custom twin-spool low-bypass afterburning turbofan engine, never mind, none of those words are English, allowed me to almost double the thrust for the same fuel flow rate. This drastically increased turn performance, top speed at sea level, rate of climb, maximum takeoff weight, loiter time, and range of the airframe. However, this engine did have one problem. At altitude, the top speed was reduced. This was because of two reasons, but it was mainly due to my fuel flow reduction to the afterburner, which produces the most thrust in the well supersonic regime. This reduced the aircraft's top speed to around Mach 1.9 at altitude as opposed to Mach 2, which the plane was originally capable of. So, once again, we had two options: increase the top speed and fuel flow, or leave them the same. Increasing the top speed would result in less fuel time, which was already catastrophically low on the F-104 airframe. If we wanted to leave them the same, the top speed would be incredibly substandard on an already low-performance airframe. However, I found something that satisfied all parties. By increasing internal fuel storage, adding conformal fuel tanks to the outside, and finally reintroducing the famous F-104 tip tanks, we drastically improved our vehicle's combat radius, top speed, and loiter time. I increased the turn rate by almost 6 degrees per second over the original. I increased the F-104's range and top speed to a maximum of 2.25. It can now sustain Mach 2 flight for up to 15 minutes, a significant improvement over the approximate 5 to 10 the F-104 could spend at Mach 2, even with the tip tanks. With an altitude of above approximately 2,000 meters, the F-104M can now supercruise thanks to the sheer dry thrust of its new engine. The last airframe modification was simply a mild effort to reduce dry weight by going through and removing useless features such as the ejection seat and replacing it with a suitable, old-fashioned silk chute. Pierre Spray would be proud of that one, but I know he'd want us to remove the radar as well. Our pilots will valiantly slam into the T-tail of the vehicle at high accelerations from all the drag, inevitably breaking their backs into a permanent C-shape. After throwing on a nice coat of paint, and skipping the entire time-lapse for it, we were ready to move on to the avionics. To keep this flying monstrosity in the air, the old control systems were completely removed from the vehicle, instead being replaced with a fly-by-wire computer, which took the inputs from the joystick, rudder pedals, and throttle quadrant. This allows the pilots to focus on flying while the computers do the rest. Although I believe we were several years too late to save any of those German pilots. These fly-by-wire systems were a standard feature on most modern fighter aircraft. Still, it's necessary for this unstable flying piece of garbage. The old F-104A featured a primary search radar with little range or tracking capability. The radar was very small and low power, and this was intentional to save weight. We took out the F-104's original search radar. Instead, we installed a legally acquired N036 Bielka actively scanned electronic array radar system for the Sukhoi 57 fighter aircraft. We also added a nose aperture for infrared search and track system. This gave the F-104 a full suite of modern BVR, search, track, and kill capabilities. The avionics and pylons would also be modified to carry medium and long-range radar-guided BVR missiles. Along with the IRST aperture, a modernized IFF and transponder equipment was also included in the nose for increased detection and safety on the battlefield. Continuing our aircraft's combat capability, ECM pods were integrated into the wingtip fuel tanks, along with a missile approach warning and directional countermeasure deployment systems. Unlike the original F-104, these wingtip fuel tanks also contain critical combat elements. They should not be removed from the aircraft in a combat situation. They did not only provide extra fuel after all. Still, they would be a ECM powerhouse, providing all the capabilities of a modern Gen 4.5 in a modular and easy-to-maintain external pod at the slight cost of extra drag. After spending about 3 years of my life trying to make the MFDs not randomly glow white and not glitch out constantly, we were just about done with the interior. I think we might have wired the stolen avionics wrong, because the MFDs sort of flicker and go out when we pull negative Gs. Y'all order that Wish.com avionics suite for your plane? But anyways, after all this was done, it was finally time to fly the modernized F-104M. The F-104G already took the name of Super Starfighter, so we'll call it the Super Starfighter. Alright, enough talk, let's see how it flies. Are you afraid of imminent invasion from your surrounding neighbors? Well, just picture this. Your inventory, full of outdated airframes. It may be a surprise to you, but those old lemons don't hold a candle to the might of a modern Air Force. Now, before you sit back and think about how screwed you are without an interceptor, the Galaxy Tech Motors Corporation has a solution for you. The F-104M. It's hard to believe this came from an 80-year-old aircraft, isn't it? With the missiles, computers, and avionics capable of going toe-to-toe with a modern fighter for less than half the cost, you'd be crazy not to buy it. If you have the money, GTMC will sell you any of these reproductions, no questions asked. In fact, GTMC is having a blowout sale. If you buy 14 of our modernized airframes, we'll throw in a 15th for free. That's right, a 15th for free. We'll even throw in a complimentary 10 cluster bombs with each aircraft purchase. You don't have to be rich for war and destruction when you buy GT Motors.
Advertisement paid for by the GT Motors Corporation. Warranty void if aircraft comes in contact with dust. Warning, all airframes are built with different use avionics you find lying around in the shed. By purchasing our aircraft, you are liable for any product failures that occur after the aircraft is exposed to dust.
So I'm sure many of you are wondering, how does this thing actually fly? Well, as you know, when this video goes up, the craft is available for download within the week. So if you want to see for yourself, just join the Discord and download the dang plane. But let's take a moment to summarize what I exactly did to the aircraft and how it improves its flight performance. The wing extensions plus leading edge extensions provide more lift and reduced wing loading, allow for an almost plus 6 degrees per second improved turn rate over the original F-104. It's not exactly impressive, but the extra wing area and thrust clearly isn't enough without just going with an entirely different airframe. Its stability approaching a stall is far higher than the original F-104. This is in part due to the vortex lift of the vehicle, and also in part due to the bottom air brake replacing the original system, which just kind of forced the stick back down when approaching a stall. That original system could lead to oscillations when you reach 15 degrees of AOA. The new leading edge devices and automatic flaps also allow for adaptable wing camber at high angles of attack, serving to further improve its flight stability and dynamics approaching the stall. Otherwise, it's honestly an unimpressive aircraft. There's not a lot to say about it. It's decently fun to fly in terms of thinking to yourself, oh man, am I gonna crash into this mountain or will I have time to turn, like 20 seconds before you reach it? The suspense will kill you. So I mean, that's that. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you're looking to fly the original F-104 I built, or get access to my entire arsenal of aircraft, or watch my entire archive of unlisted videos, or if you just want to support the channel, I just created a Patreon before this video uploads. The first tier only costs $3 since I want it to be open to anyone without a high price attached. Also, I have no clue how Patreon works, so if I screw something up, just don't be afraid to tell me in the comments or something. Anyways, that's enough shameless self-promotion for an entire lifetime. If you're still watching at this point, you either have the patience of a saint or you forgot to turn the video off before getting bored into a coma. For those of you in the coma, I hope the next video you watch is extremely loud so you get scared awake, and for the rest of you, I'll see you all in the next one. See ya!